Excellent.
Yes, all right. Philipp, please, the stage is yours.
Yes, then I proceed. And then, well, I go back to the quick presentation of myself quickly, and then I proceed with the topic. So we have founded a blockchain center at the university in Frankfurt, which is called Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, and we are focusing on, of course, education, but also doing conferences, bringing together the community, doing consulting, and also helping a couple of startups coming here from the university side as a think tank. So first of all, what key domains are out there next to the digital euro? We have traditional crypto assets, that's for example Bitcoin and Ethereum. Then we have another topic which is gaining some traction these days in Europe, that's digital securities. That's basically dematerialized securities on blockchain. And finally, we have the digital euro potentially running on a blockchain. In Germany, I have some information, of course. We have a quite progressive Ministry of Finance who have now created a crypto license for those companies in Germany who are handling Bitcoins and Ethereum on behalf of others. So that's called a crypto license. And this is in force since January already. This will drive digital assets and crypto assets. Then we have also a proposal for a new law coming up in the area of digital securities. That's basically affecting the securities market. And luckily, we will also have the European Commission pushing this entire topic. And that's now where we talk about the digital euro. The European Commission some weeks ago proposed their so-called MiCA regime, which would affect any crypto asset out there. It would affect, of course, traditional crypto assets, Bitcoin and so on. It would affect private stable coins. That's basically something like Facebook and the project Libra, now renamed to Diem, by the way. And of course, parts of the euro on blockchain. So let me quickly dive into the MiCA regulation, which is really a fascinating document because what the European Commission tries to do here is basically regulating everything related to crypto assets for the entire European or EU, for the entire European continent. That's 450 million people, all regulated with one uniform regime, right? It's quite massive. And they here created the category of crypto assets, as you can see it here, which is a brand new asset class, let's call it that way, and needs to be separated from digital securities, which are already existing, of course. You know, that's all securities, all stocks, all bonds out there. Here are some examples. But you see here that these gray boxes, they are not overlapping each other. So you have bonds and shares and securities on the right-hand side, and you have traditional crypto assets, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on the left-hand side. And they do not overlap. So that's basically a new asset class, which is here proposed. And this is now where we talk about the euro. We have the e-money regime, which is helpful for letting the euro being run on digital system in general. And now we are having very soon the so-called e-money token. That's basically something like a stable coin, but a stable coin plus the e-money license, such that it's not just a stable coin anymore, it's the euro on a blockchain format, right? In case such a stable coin is not referencing the euro, but any other asset, for example, gold or diamonds or any other things, then you would call it an asset reference token according to the European Commission's proposal. Here are some examples. And in case you have very significant token sizes, so in case the market capitalization is getting really high, then you would call it significant e-money token. And here now European financial authorities are responsible for regulation, whereas with the normal e-money token, the national financial market authority in Germany, the BaFin, for example, would be responsible. And you also have utility tokens here as one silo, which will also be regulated. For e-money tokens and asset reference tokens, issuers have to get permission by regulatory bodies, but for utility tokens, they have to, of course, comply to some rules, but they do not have to ask for permission for issuing such assets, right? And you see here now with these silos, the European Commission tackles 95% of all crypto assets, I would say so, but it's not touching digital securities yet. You see that these gray boxes are not overlapping with this digital security box. And now, where are we in terms of time? Everybody now has a smartphone. We have a market coverage of 100% with regard to smartphones, right? Everybody's having a smartphone. But back in 2005, I would say that nobody, or nearly nobody, had a smartphone. At that time, there was the iPhone 1, which came to the market. And then it took us now 15 years to get from 0% to 100%. That's 12 iPhone generations. That's billions of devices sold to all kinds of countries in the entire world. So it's a revolution which took place here with the smartphone. So we should not forget that 15 years ago, there was no iPhone out there, right? Sometimes we forget this. And if we now turn towards blockchain and DLT, the question is now, where are we standing in the year 2020? Are we at 50% or 10%? So how would you draw the line in here? My suggestion would be that we are right here, right in the very, very, very early beginning, where blockchain now is starting to take up. And the journey is pretty clear. It will take another 15 years until we will have reached 100% of market coverage, right? So that's the journey which we can expect for the years to come, and it will affect traditional crypto assets. It will affect private stable coins, digital securities, and also the digital programmable euro. What is 100%? By the way, this would, in my personal opinion, be any financial asset running, really any financial asset running on blockchain systems. That's securities, stocks, bonds, money, maybe even the car register, crypto assets, and so on. Everything then running on blockchain-based systems by the year 2035 or 2040. That would be my, of course, speculative expectation. And therefore, it's so fun, to be honest, to be in this industry, because right now the dynamic is evolving and progressing. And we see also in Germany, which is sometimes lagging a little bit behind with digital technologies, we are really seeing some dynamics going on in the financial industry, but also in the industrial companies. So this kind of dynamic, you can already feel it a little bit. Yeah? And of course, you know it, the Bitcoin price is also rising. So the dynamic in the Bitcoin world is already there. So therefore, I'm quite positive about the future. So now let's turn a little bit more to the digital euro. Why do we need it actually? I think we have more efficient cross-border payments, not necessarily between, for example, Germany and the Netherlands. That works already quite nice, forth and back, but more or less primarily for those countries not denominated in euro. So basically payments going outside the eurozone, they would dramatically benefit from such a digital programmable euro. You could then transfer, for example, the euro from here to South Korea within, say, 10 or 15 seconds, right? That's massive, and this does not work right now. Then we would have, for the industry especially, the possibility to automate payments and business processes. That's the world of smart contracts, which would then be allowed to denominate euro, yeah? So to plug the euro into smart contracts. Then we would have something which is called integration between delivery and payment. That's a massive topic, which means that we would have one single blockchain system where there is the euro plugged on top of it and securities as well. So you have stocks on the system and you have the euro for payment, such that you can do trading, settlement, consumption of products and services without leaving this platform, which would then allow a much higher efficiency, and which would also allow that consumption processes and also trading would happen without any clearing houses. That's really a dramatic benefit in terms of speed and transaction costs being driven down. And there is like huge benefit in this point here, even though, of course, it's not easy to really explain it, because it's really something technical. This just makes sense if we have rights and assets to be tokenized. So therefore, very soon we will have regulatory frameworks in place to then also be able to tokenize assets and rights. This will also come in the future. I think one of the key important aspects why the digital euro makes sense is the realm of the machine economy, the Internet of Things, so to say, where we very soon see devices such as cars, sensors, medical tech devices, and so on being connected to blockchain networks, but also being able to receive money and send money as devices. Yeah, that's not just the autonomous car driving around autonomously. It's also the autonomous car which is doing autonomous payment and autonomous accounting. That's the next step of autonomous devices, but of course this will just happen in a couple of years. That's just now popping up at the end of the horizon right now. And there is number 6, IT security and system resilience is also quite high with blockchain system. China, by the way, is having a different agenda. They of course also encourage these reasons here, but they are having another agenda which we do not have in Europe, by the way. China also tries to raise the importance of their national currency in the world by creating a digital version of their Chinese currency, right? The ECB and the European Commission is not having the agenda of increasing the importance of the euro at the expense of the US dollar. Therefore, this development is much more speedier in China, putting currencies on blockchain-based systems because they have this agenda of raising the importance of their currency. So why do we need all this, right? Where are the companies who are experimenting with this? We just, in Germany, I can tell you, I don't know about other European countries, I'm very sorry, but in Germany we have chemical companies such as BASF or Evonik experimenting with the digital euro. We also have Daimler cars and also Bosch, that sensor technologies experimenting with it. So we have a couple of large-scale companies having visions for new business model with the digital euro, but to be honest, not too much is happening out there. It's, I would say 10 to 50 large-scale companies dealing with this, but the entire SME companies in Germany have not yet discovered this topic. So we have industrial domains, for example, mobility in Europe, machinery, sensors, logistics, and energy. And then we have financial domains, for example, payments, leasing, securitization, factoring, and escrow services, right? You have the financial domains on the right-hand side, you have industry domains on the left-hand side. And the fascinating topic is now that blockchain technology will integrate the left-hand side with the right-hand side. Here is an example, that's a truck. So imagine this truck will drive autonomously in the future, but it will not just drive autonomously, it will also receive money from me in case I order the truck to transport something from A to B. So I will have to pay the truck for it. Today I would pay the logistics company. In the future I will directly pay the truck. So this is not just a self-driving truck, it is also a truck which will receive and do accounting for euro in the future as an autonomous device. So here you see that mobility and payment is being integrated. That's basically connecting the truck to a payment network. That's exactly blockchain at its best, because the truck would be an endpoint of a blockchain system, because it would have, for example, a public wallet address for receiving euro. That's another example, for example, from the world of sensors. Imagine this sensor is collecting data, it's storing the data in a database system, and it's selling the data once it's receiving money for it. So the sensor would, for example, sell data to me in case I'm paying €2.50 to the sensor. So the sensor is waiting for money to arrive, and if money arrives, then it's sending the data back to me. Could be a weather sensor, humidity sensor, all kinds of things. Could be medical technology sensor, and so on. And the sensor could also say that he sells me the entire data from last year. You know, like tons of gigabyte of data, and then the sensor would charge me not €2.50, but maybe €400. Here you would combine sensor technology with escrow services, right? So that's also blockchain at its best by combining the sensor with a digital euro payment network. And that's exactly where I would expect many startups to be founded, new business models being explored, where the left-hand side industry domain is meeting finance, because blockchain is exactly the technology which is very soon combining the left-hand side and the right-hand side. But you have to have the digital euro, otherwise it doesn't make sense so much. So here is one concrete example, and then I think I also have to stop very soon. Here is one example where a company is acting in Austria, and they are now starting to connect their tractors to blockchain and to euro payments on blockchain. So right now, the business model of the tractor company is basically selling one tractor that costs you, say, €80,000, right? And in the future, we would have pay-per-use business models, such as the tractor is not sold to a city council, for example, but rather the service of the tractor is being sold. This could, for example, be that what's being sold is 1 kilometer with a road, with road grid, right? Little stones on the grid, plus insurance. So what's being sold in the future to, for example, city councils is not the tractor anymore, as is it's happening right now. But in the future, what you will sell to city councils will be kilometers of road grid plus insurance, because in the winter you have to put small stones and salt on the street. So this delivery service will be serviced to city councils, and invoicing will be done pay per use. That means per kilometer. So what's happening here is, in the future, delivery of service plus payment and accounting, this will all be integrated in one system, and the system will be a blockchain-based system where payment occurs in euro, where the tractor is basically mirrored with a digital twin, and accounting is also triggered, for example, with an SAP system, but it's triggered by this joint system of a blockchain network, right? And the fascinating thing is that this entire transaction is finalized after, say, 1 kilometer when the tractor is driving on the road. So right now, when you are selling a tractor, you are selling the tractor, and then after weeks you get the invoice. After weeks, you're doing the accounting. The tractor might amortize after a couple of years. So the transaction will not be finalized after a couple of weeks or months, but rather maybe after years, up until the tractor has been fully depreciated, right? And here, a pay-per-use transaction would be 100% finalized after 1 kilometer, for example, when the street ends, because then delivery has ended of putting road grid on the street, payment has been executed for paying these kilometers, and accounting, that's basically sending the invoice, has also been finalized right away.
Talking about finalize, would it be possible to also finalize the presentation, Mr. Sandner?
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's the last sentence here, and it's also the last slide, because what you see here is basically that we will see many various pay-per-use business models coming up, and what I just have shown you with the tractor is just one single example, because you can apply this to any kind of sensors, machinery, and so on. If you would like to know more about it, then please get in touch with me. That's would be love to hear from you via LinkedIn or email. And I hope I clarified a little bit why it does make sense to deal with the digital program of Euro. And sorry for being a little bit over time, sorry.
No worries, no worries. It was a pleasure hearing from your side, and especially about these very, very topical things like the digital euro and regulation from the numerous reports that have been written about what is next for blockchain and the critical challenges for blockchain in the foreseen future. I think, regulation is one of the most important aspects. And of course, the digital euro. I've read that in January, the European Commission will make a decision about the digital euro, if it will proceed. Is that correct?
It's yes and no. It's much more complicated, to be honest. I could now talk 2 hours, right? What is allowed when and what, but I will not promise. So the European Commission has proposed their MiCA regulation, which will come into force in 2022. So by then, in plus 2 years, plus 3 years, all regulation is there to let the euro being ran on blockchain systems, right? So this is already underway, but it's at this point of time a proposal which is being discussed with all European member states, right? Yeah. And the European Central Bank, they will act a little bit more slowly. They will decide in summer next year whether they would like to speed up their development in the area of the digital euro or not. Yeah. And then you have national central banks, and with this I would like to close. You have national central banks, for example, in France and elsewhere, and companies like smaller banks. In Germany, there are 5 who are as banks, as commercial banks, exploring the topic of the digital euro and issuing such an euro on blockchain networks. Right. So it's very complicated, but it's fun to watch, and it's dynamically evolving.
It is the European Union, and I think it's great when we compare it, for example, to the plans of the US dollar digitally. I think we are already quite some steps ahead. This will happen in January, this dialogue. Also happening in January is the launch of Diem, formerly known as Libra. What can we expect from this? I think a lot of people were actually, thinking that Libra would never launch. Now we hear that in January, part of it will actually launch. What are your insights on this?
So Libra is a fascinating topic because, okay, I'm sorry.
So the view is currently being worked on, the stream with Mr. Sandner. Apparently something is going on. Great. So the sound is still there. We will currently discuss what is actually happening with Libra. Libra, the project that was launched by Facebook, was initiated by Facebook. They received a lot of negative comments from governments all over the world. It was said that it would never launch. Even Mark Zuckerberg, in a letter to his investors, mentioned that it would probably never launch. And now last week, there was an article I read an article in the Financial Times that Libra might launch in January already. They renamed it to Diem. And so we're very curious to learn what Mr. Sandner knows about this and, of course, what his thoughts are about this. Let's see if he is already back on track, if he's back in the studio. There he is. Yes.
Yes, it finally works. You never know with this technology stuff whether it works or not, but luckily it now works. We are having now finally everything under control. So let's directly talk about Libra. Libra has been the project initiated by Facebook 1.5 years ago. At that time, PayPal was there, Visa was interested, and so on. And that's basically have been quite a large impulse also for banks and central banks to investigate what is Libra here exactly doing. And you could also interpret this as basically let's call it like an attack on the central bank, right? But this attack was just a white paper, and very soon central banks and governments said you cannot simply start a private currency. This will not be possible, and Facebook will also not be able to do it. It's just too important. It might disrupt financial systems. Therefore, we would not allow it. Yeah, that was the public sentiment quite a while. And then Libra basically changed their concept back in April this year. And since then, the idea of Libra was to not simply create a world coin, like one currency for the world, but rather to focus on the technical infrastructure for existing currencies, right? So that's not as visionary anymore, but therefore it would be possible to get allowance and permission by central banks and by governments, right? And since then, Libra, it has become a little bit silent up until last week. That's absolutely right. When Libra now proposed that they would leverage their own technical infrastructure next year and launch an US dollar referenced stablecoins, similarly as it is existing with the US dollar stablecoin called Coinbase. USD coin, as it's called USDC coin, for example, and others as well. So you see here that Libra, now called Diem since this week, they renamed themselves, that Libra, now called Diem, is basically stepping into the track what other companies have already been doing in the US. That's basically creating US dollar referenced stable coins plus the required license. It's not the vision anymore we had 1.5 years ago, but on the other hand side, it's basically a feasible project which you then also can bring live and can launch to the market. And we already have 2-3 stable coins of this kind, and I think we can expect that the Diem or the Libra stable coin being launched in January would immediately be a success in terms of size and capitalization. And then maybe let's see what happens. Maybe they will also, at a later stage, bring a euro reference stablecoin and other referenced stable coins as well in the future.
Well, one question to round this discussion off, I was really curious about, if there's one thing that Facebook did really well is that they kicked the hornet's nest quite hard. They really sped up the developments in China, for example. The USA is still lagging behind, it seems to. The European Union will decide, so in January, if they will continue with the project. Practically, when will we see a digital euro? When can consumers in Europe, in the Netherlands, for example, start actually using this digital euro? What do you think?
It's also a very difficult question. So to provide a simple answer, to be honest, it will happen next year. But this will be the euro on a blockchain which will be issued by commercial banks, right? It will not be the euro issued by the European Central Bank. Yeah. So imagine existing banks out there. I think ING is very active, but in Germany, for example, Commerzbank, DZ Bank, and others, they are very active that they will create a software solution. And the software solution will then be ready for companies, such that companies, for example, Daimler and Bosch in Germany, could equip their sensors or their machines with the digital euro and allow their sensors and the machines to pay. This will happen next year already, but in smaller versions. You know, this is not basically then ready for the entire European Union, but for a selected set of companies who would like to experiment with this. And I would expect also ING and other banks to explore this as well. So the short answer to your question is it will happen and start next year, but it will not go everything overnight. It will then basically increase in terms of more projects, more pilot projects, more POCs year by year. And we can expect the European Central Bank to launch potentially their version of the digital euro maybe by 2025 or maybe by 2026. So that's really quite some time down the stream, right? Yeah. And here we also see that China is much more ahead. China is already live with their system. So the distance between the European Central Bank and the Chinese Central Bank is probably 4 to 6 years.
So, wow. That's quite a gap. That's really interesting gap. Mr. Sandner, many thanks. Many thanks for sharing your thoughts. You're also sharing your thoughts quite often in media like Forbes. As mentioned, you've written 2 books. So if people are interested in more of you, they will definitely find it if they Google your name online. Mr. Sandner, again, many thanks for joining us from Munich. And wishing you all the best with your research and your incredible projects. Thank you.
Thanks.